Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Monday, May the 26th, 2025. And before I get to what happened on this day in boxing history, I can tell you what's happening today as of today, and that is Terence Bud Crawford is arriving in Australia. Grant Tassie Brown put up the video over the weekend that had been sent to him by Terence Crawford on the plane. Business class, of course. Not cheap business class, geez. But he's on his way. It was only a quick 9 or 10 second video, but he's going to be here today, and I'm sure Tassie is probably at the airport about now. Actually, I think they're meeting in Sydney, and then from there they will go to the Gold Coast, and then back to Melbourne, and then back to Sydney, I think it is. So lands in Sydney, goes to the Gold Coast, comes to Melbourne, and then ends up in Sydney. I think that's the way it goes anyway. So it's still time to get your tickets. I'm pretty sure there's still a few table tickets left at the Melbourne Pavilion on Thursday. I did speak to Tassie the other day, and he's pretty excited, but also obviously pretty stressed. It's been a big exercise getting it all together. And he did go over the itinerary. Geez, he's going to be a busy guy. Both of them will be busy, but there's dinners and gym appearances and private get-togethers and all this sort of stuff. He's going to be very, very busy. He's going to earn that money, I can tell you. So if you are on the Gold Coast or in Sydney or Melbourne, just check the social media of Tassie Brown, and he'll have all the details there about where he's going to be. And geez, if you're in those places and you want to see him, you've got about 10 different opportunities. So support Terence Crawford in Australia. Tassie Brown's done a great job, firstly, to get him here, but to give everyone access to him. Now, he did actually say an interesting thing, and I know Tassie will probably be the one that'll cop it a little bit for this, but Terence Crawford doesn't do interviews. He will do interviews, of course, with selected people, but he doesn't sign autographs. Now, I asked Tassie about it because I saw it on one of the posts there somewhere, and I think a couple of people weren't obviously happy about it, and I think they sort of directed their blame a little bit at Tassie, but I asked him about it. It's just excuse that wind, by the way. Very, very windy morning, so apologies if that's coming through the microphone. But yeah, Tassie said, no, mate, he said, it's not me. He said, I want everyone to get an autograph. It's just always been a thing with Terence Crawford. He doesn't sign autographs. So I'm not sure how you tell, probably along the journey, hundreds of people that are going to meet him that, sorry, I don't do autographs. But do we really ask people for autographs these days? I'm not sure that it has something to do with people with the memorabilia and all that sort of stuff that they sell, and maybe they profit of it. Maybe he doesn't like that. I don't know. But in this day and age, isn't it all about the selfie? I mean, I haven't asked anyone for an autograph for a long, long time, but a photo or a selfie, no drama. So yeah, just an interesting one. So if you are at one of those events, that's why he won't, well, there's a reason he won't sign autographs apparently. So either way, I'm sure it'll be a very, very successful event. And as I said, Tassie Brown's put in a lot of work into it, and is also looking at the WBC convention next year. I've had a look over the proposal and all that sort of stuff and what it entails. It is very extensive. To bring literally hundreds of people, not one like Terence Crawford, over 100 people to bring out here and put up and organise accommodation and food and transport and the rooms for all the seminars and all that sort of stuff, and the ball, and oh geez, I've got a headache just thinking about it. But Tassie Brown, he's very intent on getting it to Australia. What a coup it'd be, the WBC convention in Australia. I think it's going to be in Sydney. So whether he can pull it off is another thing. A lot of backing and funding and sponsorship needed to get it off the ground. But as I said about Tassie before, when he puts his mind to something, he is in balls and all. He's Tassie, and best of luck to him for this week for everything. All right, on this day, let's go back to, where are we? 1968, just a couple, not a lot of big names in this, so I'll just go through them quickly. Italy's Sandro Mazzinghi won the 154-pound world title, defeating Korea's Ki Soon Kim. That was in Milan, Italy, 1968. 1984, America's Albert Davila won the WBC bantamweight title with a win over Enrique Sanchez, 11th round knockout in Miami, Florida. In 2001, Floyd Mayweather Jr. defended his WBC super featherweight or 130-pound title over Carlos Hernandez on points. That fight took place at Grand Rapids, Michigan. And in 2009, Japan's Daisuke Naito defeated Zhang Zong in Tokyo. No doubt that is wrong, but that's my pronunciation anyway. And that was for the world flyweight title. And as expected, a lot of stories and everything yesterday about the Sonny Liston fight with Muhammad Ali. I think I said yesterday all the conspiracy theories are still there. Everyone talking about it. And as expected, lots of stories about it yesterday. On the weekend, look, I haven't seen a lot of the fights, just highlights and a few bits and pieces, but Josh Taylor lost his third straight fight. He lost to, was it Esakawa or something his name? I don't know, what was his name? I won't look it up. I didn't really know much about him. I know a little bit more about him now after watching the highlights, but Josh Taylor, yeah, I'm not quite sure where he goes now. 3 straight losses. He has gone, well, he's gone to 147. He did struggle at 140, but 147, he just looks like a shell of himself. It's an interesting one for him because at 140 he looks a shell of himself because of the weight drop, and at 147 he looks at the shell of himself because he's coming up against heavier, stronger guys. So he's just in sort of no man's land at the moment, but not sure where he goes. Moses Otama, he had a win, a second round knockout, but he's now the number one contender for the WBO title, by the way. The new rankings come out over the weekend. Justice Honey is out, of course, because of him challenging Fabio Wardley for that WBA interim title. So he's now no longer in the WBO rankings, and Moses Otama is the number one contender. Now, is he ready? That's the big question. Look, depends on who he's going to fight. There is talk. He's put the challenge out to Hrgović, to Bakole, and Zhang was the other one, Zhilei Zhang. Now, the word is, of course, is he ready for those types of guys? Yeah, I think he is. Look, you know, his style and his youth, his speed, power, all that sort of stuff, I think against those particular guys, he'd be okay. I mean, Zhilei Zhang is just a big guy who doesn't really move much. He's there to be hit. Bakole is the same, just stands in front of you, very, very sort of robot-like is Bakole, and he'll just stand there in front of you and try and out-punch you. Well, I don't think that's a good idea against Otama, who's just going to be throwing 2 or 3 punches to every one of Bakole's. And Hrgović, I think out of all of those, might be the more dangerous guy because he's probably got a little bit more movement to him, I suppose. I don't know, but I think all 3 of them are the perfect opponents. If Moses Otama wants to make a statement and maybe put himself in line for a potential shot at Alexander Usyk, which I don't think is going to happen. I think Usyk will sort of be gone by that stage. But, yeah, those 3 guys, I think he can knock out all 3 of them. Now, the challenge comes when he comes up against someone with a little bit more movement or boxing IQ, I suppose. But I suppose apart from a Usyk, maybe a Parker, who else is there in the division that could do that to Otama and give him a little bit of, you know, angles and speed and movement and being able to tie him up and negate him? I'm not sure there's anyone in the heavyweight division apart from 2 or 3 guys. So I think we might see a Mike Tyson-esque rise through the ranks. The only difference between Otama and Tyson, though, is firstly, I think Tyson was a lot better fighter, just my opinion, is that Tyson was fighting every 2 or 3 weeks and just storming through guys, and Otama is not really, hasn't really been that active. Even at that age, I know they're probably trying to just sort of, and I know it's a different age, by the way, different time than what it was back in the mid-'80s, but I just think Otama needs to be fighting 3 or 4 times a year. I know he's only a young guy and they're trying to just sort of bring him along slowly, but doesn't mean he can't fight regularly. I just don't get it these days with these young fighters who, because they the top line guys only fight once or twice a year. They think it's okay to do it as well. And you've got guys that have, been pros for 5 years and had 10 or 12 fights. I think early in your career, probably the first 3 years, I think you should have at least a dozen fights in your first 3 years. And then after that, then you can sort of slow down. And by about 12 fights, if you're any good, you're probably going to be ranked by that stage. Then you can sort of pick and choose a little bit more. But I don't understand why these guys, fight once or twice a year and expect to improve and expect to be ready for a world title shot when it comes along. Now, it's one thing for, say, at heavyweight, the Usyks of the world, or Furies, or Joshua's, Parkers to fight once or twice. I mean, they're there. They're legit. They've got experience. They've got the runs on the board. They don't need to fight any more than that. They're fighting for money. But the Atomas of the world, Huni's been pretty good in that aspect. I know he's had a few injuries, but that's why I think his fight, he'll be ready to go with Wardley because he's had 12 fights or something again. I know he had a couple of injuries, but in the last 12 months, he's actually been pretty active. So I think it'll hold him in good stead anyway. But we will see. And speaking of that fight, what is that, 2 weeks away, I think it is? The Huni and Wardley fight, as well as Opetaia and Skawao, the double header. Big weekend for Tasman fighters, Huni and Opetaia in world title fight. Well, I know the Huni fight's only for an interim title, but still, it's a title fight in the space of 24 hours. So, big weekend for Mick and Francis up there with Tasman fighters. All right, it is also fight week for Charlo and Plant, not against each other, unfortunately. I can't even remember who they're fighting. Where is it? Caleb Plant will fight Jose Armando Resendez, and Jamal Charlo will fight Thomas Lamana. So that's this weekend in Las Vegas. Now, is it T-Mobile? I think it is. So, look, both of these guys have been inactive as well, haven't they? Charlo and Plant. Now, this is all obviously aimed for them to fight each other at some stage. I'm not that excited about it. I mean, they're both Charlos. I'm just not quite sure where they're at. I don't think they know where they're at. I think they'll fight and then they'll have an 18-month layoff, at this stage of their career. I'm not, if it's on for free on Foxtel, I'll probably watch it, but I'm not going out of my way to see it. I don't know anything about the opponents, and I'm not quite sure where Plant and Charlo are. Plant still talks about a rematch with Canelo. Mate, you got knocked out, all right? So just relax. All right, Charlo, you've been out. You can't just step up after, about one fight in about 5 years. So you're out. So they could probably fight each other, and maybe the winner of that could maybe be in line for a big fight after that. But there's plenty of guys in front of them at the moment. So they'll have to wait their turn. But anyway, I'll check the guides and see if it's on. If it is, I suppose I'll watch it, but certainly not that excited about it. Now, read a couple of interviews on the weekend, which were really good. And I know this is not probably overly exciting to everyone wanting fight news and all that sort of stuff, but I read a couple of really good interviews about, one was Freddie Roach, and the other one was about Chuck Wepner, the inspiration for Rocky. So firstly, it was great reading the article about Freddie Roach, and I touched on the other day, they've named it the square where Wildcard is after him, the Freddie Roach Square, I think they've just called it, but just about how he met Manny Pacquiao and how it all come to light and how he started, and he was under the tutelage of Eddie Futch initially. He actually lived in Las Vegas at the start. He was just probably a fledgling trainer, I suppose. He'd done a little bit with Eddie Futch, but wasn't really sort of looking at that long term. And he Mickey Rourke befriended him, the actor, and asked him to train him, asked him to move from Las Vegas to Los Angeles to train him. Mickey Rourke's career wasn't going that well and he wanted to become a boxer, and Freddie Roach was very apprehensive about it, but he needed it at the time. He was broke, he had not much happening, so Mickey Rourke moved him back to LA, set him up in a gym, in a house, and started training Mickey Rourke. So he did say he owes Mickey Rourke a lot for getting him started. He's the reason where he is now. And of course it didn't last long for Mickey Rourke. It wasn't very successful. He did have a few fights though, but went back to acting. And Freddie Roach stayed in LA and set up, I don't know if it was actually the Wild Card as it is now. It was another gym, but something happened, but he used that as a platform to then launch the Wild Card. And he still remembers, he said, the day that Manny Pacquiao walked up the stairs as a skinny sort of former little world champion. I think it was a flyweight or super flyweight or something like that, and asked him to do pads with him. He came up just with a couple of friends, knocked on the door and said, look, you know, I'd like you to, I heard you're really good on the mitts. So Freddie Roach took him. He said after that, he said it was just, I suppose in boxing terms, love at first sight. And he said his first fight with Ledweba, I think it was, the South African at the MGM Grand, no one wanted to fight him. And there was a late pull-out, so Manny Pacquiao stepped in, absolutely took him apart and won the IBF, I think it was the 130-pound title, and the rest is history. And the amount of big fights I've had since then and will have coming up with the Mario Barrios fight. Yeah, it's a really, really good story. And I'm sure a lot of you watching this have met Freddie Roach in the past, have been to the wild card. And if you haven't, you should get there. It really is. If you're ever in America, make sure you get to the wild card. Just walk in, say good day, shake his hand. He'll tell you some stories, and just a really, really lovely guy. And but it was really good just to read a little bit of where he came from and where he's at now, and the way he trains his fighters. He still refers back to the Eddie Futch days of what he learned from him. If you're not familiar with Eddie Futch, by the way, Eddie Futch really, if you know your boxing, he's in the same league as an Angelo Dundee or Emmanuel Stewart, one of these guys, a legendary trainer, trained the likes of Muhammad Ali back in his day, just Joe Fraser. So an excellent fight trainer, and he still sort of uses a lot of his tactics today. The other one was Chuck Wepner. It was just, I don't know why there was the interview there, whether it was the anniversary or something, I don't know. But if you didn't know, he was the inspiration for Rocky. And just to hear these old time fighters talk, you know, he fought Ali, he fought Fraser, he fought Foreman, and he fought Liston. What a resume! 4 fighters to come up against, and he fought them all, never beat them all. He still sort of reflects back to his big moment in time when he fought Muhammad Ali, and still calls it a knockdown. Chuck, mate, we love you and what you inspired in the Rocky movies, but it wasn't a knockdown, mate. And he did talk about if he had a different fight plan with Foreman and Liston and Fraser and Ali, that maybe it would have been different result-wise. I don't think that would be the case, but it's great to hear stories of guys like Chuck Wepner, who would probably classify as a journeyman, club fighter, whatever it might be, but always turned up, always gave a good fight, and got cut a lot. Every fight he had a different cut. And big cuts, but he always gave his all. I don't think he ever got knocked out by any of them, to be honest, from memory. I'd have to check that out, but he always turned up the fight, and you need those type of fighters in boxing. And of course, we all know what happened when Sylvester Stallone went to see him fight Muhammad Ali, and one of the biggest movie franchises in history was created, and that was the Rocky series. And I think he still gets some money from the royalties from that. There was a out-of-court settlement, I think, between Sylvester Stallone and Chuck Wepner, because he did sue him for being rewarded for those movies. And I think there was a silent agreement on the side to look after him for the rest of his life. But a good read anyway. So guys, look, that's going to do it for this Monday. Hope you have a great day. We'll catch you tomorrow.